In what initially appeared to be a routine late-night encounter inside a private hospital wing, an unexpected development quickly unfolded that has since drawn quiet attention from those familiar with the situation. According to individuals present nearby, the atmosphere was tense but controlled when the renowned millionaire doctor approached a woman who, by all outward measures, did not belong to his elite circle. Known publicly for his groundbreaking medical work, disciplined lifestyle, and carefully guarded privacy, the doctor had long avoided personal controversies, making what happened next all the more surprising. Sources say the doctor lowered his voice and delivered a brief but startling request, one that did not match the professional setting or his reputation. He asked her to pretend to be his wife. The words were spoken with urgency rather than emotion, as if time itself were working against him. The woman, described as financially struggling and still finding her footing in the medical field, reportedly froze in disbelief. At first, she assumed it was a misunderstanding or an ill-timed joke, something said out of stress and meant to be taken lightly. However, the seriousness in his expression quickly made it clear that he was not joking. Those familiar with the doctor's background say his life, though wealthy and influential, is governed by rigid expectations. His family name carries weight in medical and corporate circles, and any deviation from those expectations can trigger severe consequences. Insiders suggest that the request was not motivated by romance or impulse, but by an urgent personal crisis threatening his position, reputation, and future authority. The woman, caught completely off guard, listened as he explained that appearances mattered more now than ever, and that he needed someone who could step into the role immediately without drawing suspicion. Observers note that the contrast between them made the proposal even more shocking. She had no wealth, no social standing, and no connection to his powerful world. That, sources claim, was precisely why he chose her. She was unknown, unentangled, and unlikely to attract attention from the media or his influential associates. Still, the idea of being pulled into a fabricated marriage with a man she barely knew left her visibly unsettled. As the conversation continued, what began as a strange request took on the tone of a calculated offer. He spoke calmly, outlining how temporary the arrangement would be and how carefully it would be controlled. Yet even before details were fully explained, it was clear that this was not a simple favor. The weight of the moment settled heavily, and those close enough to observe noticed her hesitation growing stronger with every passing second. By the time the conversation paused, one thing was evident: this was not merely an odd encounter, but the beginning of a situation with potentially life-altering consequences. Whether driven by desperation, strategy, or necessity, the doctor's request had crossed a line that could not easily be undone, and the woman now stood at the edge of a decision that would pull her into a world far more complicated than she ever expected. As more details quietly emerged, it became clear that the proposal was structured less like an emotional plea and more like a carefully designed agreement. According to sources familiar with the conversation, the doctor made it clear from the beginning that this was not a romantic gesture, nor was it driven by sudden affection. He explained that his professional standing, family trust, and controlling interest in a private medical network were all tied to a personal requirement imposed by his family and governing board. Remaining unmarried beyond a specific deadline would trigger clauses that could strip him of decision-making power and place his assets under external control. The woman listened as he calmly laid out the reality of his situation, reportedly stunned by how methodical and detached his explanation was. He described the arrangement as temporary and strategic, emphasizing that public perception was the only thing that mattered. They would be seen together at formal events, professional gatherings, and family functions. On paper and in public, they would be husband and wife. Privately, he assured her, boundaries would exist, and every step would be agreed upon in advance. Financial compensation, housing, and protection from public scrutiny were all included in the offer. However, just as the proposal began to sound like a strange but manageable solution, the doctor introduced a condition that dramatically shifted the tone of the conversation. He stated, with deliberate clarity, that under no circumstances was she to develop real feelings for him. The condition was not framed as a suggestion but as a firm rule, one he believed was necessary to keep the arrangement clean, temporary, and free from emotional complications. Those familiar with the exchange say this was the moment her expression changed entirely. She reportedly questioned why such a condition was necessary, prompting the doctor to explain that emotional involvement had destroyed similar arrangements within his circle before. He spoke of reputations ruined, contracts challenged, and personal lives collapsing once feelings entered the equation. Love, he implied, was unpredictable and dangerous, especially when wealth and power were involved. To him, this condition was not cruelty but precaution. The woman, however, appeared conflicted. While the financial security and opportunity could alter the course of her life, the demand to control her emotions felt unrealistic and unsettling. Insiders say she pointed out that emotions are not contractual obligations, and promising not to feel anything was far more complicated than signing legal documents. The doctor acknowledged this, but insisted that she must at least agree to try, stressing that the success of the arrangement depended on emotional distance. As the discussion continued, it became evident that the offer placed her in a difficult position. Accepting meant stepping into a world of privilege governed by rules she did not create. Refusing meant walking away from a solution that could ease her struggles but preserve her independence. Those close to the situation described the air between them as tense and uncertain, with both fully aware that this single condition could determine everything. By the time the terms were fully explained, the arrangement no longer sounded like a simple favor. It was a calculated alliance built on restraint, secrecy, and control, leaving the woman to weigh whether protecting her heart was even possible once she agreed to wear the title of his wife. As the situation reached its most uncertain point, those close to the matter say the silence that followed was heavier than any words exchanged earlier. The woman reportedly took time to process the implications of what she had just heard, fully aware that this was no longer a hypothetical discussion. The doctor had made his position unmistakably clear, and the choice now rested entirely with her. Accepting would place her under constant observation, scrutiny, and expectation. Declining would mean returning to a life defined by struggle, but also freedom. Observers familiar with high-profile contractual marriages note that such arrangements often begin with confidence and control, only to unravel under emotional pressure. In this case, the imbalance of power was impossible to ignore. The doctor possessed wealth, influence, and a clear objective. She possessed uncertainty, vulnerability, and unanswered questions about how such an arrangement would change her sense of self. According to insiders, she openly questioned how long the arrangement would last and what would happen once the deadline passed. The doctor responded that once the conditions binding him were satisfied, the marriage would be dissolved quietly, with no public scandal. Despite the reassurance, doubts lingered. The woman reportedly wondered how convincing a marriage could be if both parties were constantly guarding their emotions. Public affection, shared appearances, and daily proximity would be required, all while pretending nothing real existed beneath the surface. Experts in social dynamics point out that prolonged role-playing often blurs emotional boundaries, regardless of intent. This reality made the doctor's condition seem increasingly unrealistic, even dangerous. Sources indicate that the doctor, for the first time, showed a hint of hesitation himself. While he remained firm about the rules, he acknowledged that the arrangement would demand sacrifices from both sides. He emphasized that discretion, discipline, and mutual respect were essential, warning that any deviation could jeopardize everything he had worked for. To him, the risk of losing control over his legacy outweighed the personal discomfort such a marriage might create. As the conversation drew to a close, no immediate decision was announced. The woman requested time, a response that reportedly surprised the doctor but did not anger him. Those familiar with his character say he respected calculated decisions, even when they delayed his plans. What remained unresolved was whether time would bring clarity or deepen the conflict already taking shape beneath the surface. By the following morning, speculation had begun quietly circulating among a limited circle. Had she accepted the offer, or was she preparing to walk away? The absence of confirmation only intensified interest, as situations involving power, secrecy, and emotional restraint rarely remain contained for long. Analysts suggest that if the arrangement proceeds, it could evolve into something far more complex than either party intends. What is certain is that this was never just about pretending to be a wife. It was about control, survival, and the unpredictable cost of keeping emotions locked away. Whether the agreement moves forward or collapses before it begins, the consequences of that whispered request are likely to follow both of them long after the final decision is made.